Welcome, deep divers. Today, we're plunging into a really fascinating and I think often misunderstood realm, altered perception.
Mhm.
Now, for many of us, substances like psychedelics might bring to mind counterculture movements, maybe personal quests, or even just some wild stories.
Sure, that's the common association.
But what if there's a tradition where these potent compounds weren't about recreation at all, not about getting high, but were seen as, well, strict, even perilous tools on a very specific spiritual path?
Right.
That's our focus today. The teachings of Don Juan Matus, as Carlos Castaneda wrote about them. And let me tell you, Don Juan's perspective offers a dramatically different lens, really different.
It really does. And our mission with this deep dive, I think, is to truly unpack Don Juan's precise and, frankly, often stark view of these substances.
Stark is a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll explore their very narrow purpose, the inherent dangers he rigorously warned against, and their ultimate, quite limited role in what he called the arduous path of a warrior. You know, when you delve into indigenous spiritual traditions, the depth, the nuance, and the immense respect surrounding powerful natural substances, it often stands in really stark contrast to some of the more casual Western interpretations we might see.
That's such a crucial distinction, and I think it's vital we establish that foundational understanding right from the get-go.
Absolutely. Within Don Juan's tradition, these were never, ever about personal enjoyment or getting high. Not even close.
Right.
They were unequivocally understood as tools of power, used for specific, disciplined objectives. And that core distinction, it's paramount to grasping, well, everything else we're about to discuss.
Okay, so with that crucial framing set up, let's get into what these tools actually were. Because Don Juan himself didn't even use our common term psychedelics, did he? He had his own language for them.
He did, yes. He referred to them exclusively as plants of power.
Plants of power.
Just that terminology itself immediately shifts our perspective, doesn't it? It signals that these weren't just chemical compounds, but living entities with distinct personalities and specific roles within his spiritual framework.
That's fascinating. So what were these particular plants of power then? The ones that formed such a critical, even if temporary, part of his teachings? Our sources detail three main ones, each with its own character, its own instruction. Right.
That's right. The first, and probably the most widely recognized from Castaneda's early books, is peyote.
Okay, peyote.
Don Juan personified it as mescalito, and he described mescalito not just as a plant, but as a teacher and spirit.
A teacher.
Yes, a teacher that fundamentally opens eyes to the perception of the world. In Castaneda's writing, mescalito is portrayed as a teacher of justice.
Wow, a teacher of justice. That's a powerful, maybe surprising title for a plant. What kind of justice are we talking about here? Is it like a moral code or something?
Yeah.
Deeper, more elemental.
Oh, much deeper than human morality or, legal justice. Mescalito taught a cosmic justice, the inherent order of existence.
Okay, cosmic justice.
Yeah, it was about how the world is structured and how one must live in agreement with its fundamental forces, a kind of existential harmony, if you will.
Existential harmony.
Right. So to be in accord with Mescalito's teachings meant living in sync with reality itself, really understanding your place within its grand design. Failing that meant living out of alignment, creating imbalance, within oneself and with the world.
Wow, okay. That gives justice a whole new, much bigger meaning.
Right.
So if peyote offered that foundation of cosmic harmony, what other plants did Don Juan use to expand perception even further?
Well, next in his arsenal were psilocybin mushrooms.
Mushrooms, right.
Their function, according to Don Juan, was to grant the ability to go beyond the ordinary description of reality.
Beyond the description.
Exactly, allowing a person to meet other forms of consciousness. He taught that these mushrooms open the gates to the world of inorganic beings.
Inorganic beings.
Yes, and they were instrumental in helping his students encounter what he called emissaries, entities from these other non-ordinary realms.
Okay, so peyote for living in agreement with the world, mushrooms for interacting with other consciousnesses. What was the third plant Don Juan used? And what kind of power, maybe peril, did it represent? I understand this one was considerably more intense.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're referring to datura, often known as toluca or Jimson weed.
Datura, right.
And Don Juan was unwavering in his emphasis on its extremely dangerous and destructive nature. Extremely.
Okay. Dangerous how?
Well, while it was certainly capable of bestowing immense might and magical powers, he issued a really dire warning. It also possessed the power to break a person.
Break a person.
Yes. He consistently stressed that the price for the powers it offered was simply too high.
To break a person, that's a chilling phrase. What exactly did he mean by that? What were the consequences of paying such a high price?
Well, to break a person meant a profound spiritual fragmentation, a loss of their core self. It could lead to deep and often irreversible mental and spiritual imbalance.
So not just a bad trip.
Oh no, far beyond that. It was the potential for someone to lose their very center, their connection to their human self, and become, irrevocably lost in the realms they were trying to explore. The price was potentially losing one's sanity, one's capacity for ordinary life.
That truly underscores the seriousness here, the gravity with which these substances were approached. And it wasn't just about their direct, physiological or psychological effects, was it? Don Juan also taught that each plant demanded a certain kind of reverence.
Precisely. He instructed that each plant had its own personality and purpose, and crucially had to be approached with profound respect as living beings.
Living beings.
Yeah, this isn't just about being cautious. It's about acknowledging a spiritual essence within them. That's a core tenet you find in many indigenous spiritual traditions around the world, actually.
Okay, so we've got these incredibly powerful plants of power, each with its own character, its specific lessons demanding immense respect. But you mentioned earlier, and Don Juan was very clear, they weren't for recreation. So what was their actual purpose? What were they truly supposed to achieve for a student on the warrior's path? This is where it gets really interesting, I think.
Yes, this brings us right to the heart of Don Juan's teaching regarding these plants. Their primary function, the main goal, was to shift the assembly point.
Shift the assembly point.
He constantly reiterated that their purpose was not to entertain or to give a high. Those were just, side effects, not the goal at all.
The assembly point, and that's a concept many listeners might not be familiar with. Can you elaborate on what that means and what this shift actually accomplishes for a student?
Certainly. The assembly point is, essentially our locus of perception. Think of it as an energetic point on our luminous body where our attention is habitually fixed.
Okay.
And this fixation is what creates and maintains our ordinary reality, the world as we typically know it and describe it.
Got it.
So, shifting this point achieves several crucial things. First, it vividly shows a person other worlds of perception. It demonstrates, undeniably, that our everyday reality is not the only one out there.
Right. Opens the door.
Exactly. Second, it provides experience impossible in everyday consciousness, dramatically expanding the student's experiential palette beyond anything they could normally imagine. And third, through this direct experience, it teaches fundamentally that our ordinary reality is just one of many.
So it's like cracking open the shell of what we think is reality and revealing there's this whole universe of possibilities inside. It's not just a subtle nudge then. It sounds like a fundamental reorientation.
Oh, not subtle at all. Don Juan framed it as a push, a leap toward the unknown.
A leap?
The ultimate goal was so the student, like Castaneda, could see with their own eyes that the world is much wider than its description. It's about a direct, undeniable experience that shatters preconceived notions, forces a new understanding of reality.
That makes perfect sense. But with such profound shifts, such access to other worlds, I can only imagine the inherent peril involved. Don Juan wouldn't grant access to something so powerful without some serious repeated warnings, would he?
Never. Absolutely not. Don Juan was unyielding in his emphasis on the inherent danger of these plants. He consistently warned of their potent downsides, which were just as significant, maybe even more so, than their revelatory capabilities.
And what were those specific risks he outlined? What could go wrong if someone wasn't, adequately prepared or didn't fully grasp their true nature and the whole context of their use?
Well, he detailed significant negative consequences, and they went way beyond just physical harm. These plants, he warned, can captivate, unbalance, and make a person dependent on alien power.
Dependent on alien power. Wow.
Yeah, that's a powerful warning, isn't it? It suggests a loss of self-control, a loss of autonomy, being tethered to forces that are not your own. And crucially, he also stressed that they do not provide stable knowledge.
No stable knowledge.
Right. They only offer access to an altered perception. You might see the world differently for a time, but that doesn't mean you inherently understand it or gain lasting wisdom, or, importantly, can navigate it safely without further discipline.
So it's like being given a momentary glimpse of this vast, complex map, maybe to a hidden treasure, but without the skills, the training, or the discipline to actually read the map, navigate the terrain, or retrieve the treasure safely.
That's a good analogy.
Without that warrior's discipline, it just sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Precisely. He was explicit about it. Without the discipline of a warrior, a person can destroy themselves.
Destroy themselves.
Yeah, this wasn't some casual warning. It was absolutely central to his teaching. And this is why, over time, Don Juan gradually weaned Castaneda off dependence on the plants of power.
Right, he moved him away from them.
Exactly. His ultimate teaching was that a true warrior must learn to shift the assembly point without them, relying on internal practices rather than these external aids.
Which brings us full circle, doesn't it? To the idea of these plants of power being teachers, yes, but certainly not masters. They open the door, but they don't walk you through it forever.
That's it, exactly.
So despite the dangers, Don Juan still acknowledged their role as valuable, albeit temporary, educators, especially in the early stages.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Despite the very real dangers and their profound limitations, he absolutely acknowledged them as teachers. Each offered unique, invaluable lessons to the apprentice, preparing them for the true path ahead.
So just briefly, what were those unique lessons again? It's always helpful to recap what each spirit, as he called them, imparted.
Of course. So Mescalito, the spirit of peyote, provided lessons on harmony, on cosmic justice, showing how the world is structured and how to live in agreement with its fundamental order.
Right, harmony.
Then the psilocybin mushrooms opened the gates to the world of inorganic beings, helping one meet emissaries and other forms of consciousness, really expanding the very definition of being. And datura, despite its extreme danger, offered might and magical powers, but always, as Don Juan warned, at a too high price, a cost to one's very essence.
A distinct lesson from each, then, but always with a profound cost. It was definitely not a free ride to knowledge or power.
Far from it. Don Juan consistently emphasized that each of these spheres could teach, but demanded payment. And that payment was in the form of energy, discipline, and a readiness for trials. This payment wasn't just theoretical, it was a profound personal investment, a transformation that required the student to be utterly committed. And ultimately, his view of these plants of power, it was encapsulated in a particularly poignant analogy, one that really captures their ultimate limited role.
You mentioned Don Juan had a powerful analogy for their role. How did he put it, and why was that perspective so pivotal for his students moving forward?
He called them crutches.
Crutches.
Yes. Don Juan's final pivotal view is basically this. Psychedelics are only needed as a first strike against the barrier of perception.
A first strike.
Right. He asserted that they open the door, but you have to walk through it yourself, otherwise the door turns into a trap.
Wow.
They're a temporary aid, just to show what's possible. They are not a permanent solution for achieving or maintaining higher states of awareness. If you rely on the crutches too long, well, you never develop your own strength to walk.
That's such a powerful and vivid image. A door turning into a trap if you don't take the steps yourself. It really drives home his ultimate message about the warrior's true path, doesn't it? So beyond these external aids, these crutches, what was the real mastery, the real discipline Don Juan taught for sustained awareness?
Well, his ultimate message to Castaneda was unequivocally clear. The true path of a warrior is impeccability and discipline, not plants.
Impeccability and discipline.
Yes. The plants provide that initial, maybe shocking glimpse. But sustained awareness, true mastery, that requires far more profound internal work.
So it's all about developing internal tools then, not relying on external ones. What were those internal tools? What practices did he teach to achieve these shifts without the plants?
Precisely. The true mastery of a warrior, according to Don Juan, involved learning to travel these other worlds without crutches, relying instead on dedicated practices such as stalking.
Stalking.
Which is about mastering awareness and controlling one's behavior in everyday life. Then there's dreaming, learning to navigate and influence non-ordinary reality through dreams.
Okay.
Not doing,
Yeah.
which is about breaking habitual patterns to perceive energy directly. And of course, impeccability, that unwavering commitment to one's path and purpose. These are huge areas in themselves, really, worthy of many deep dives. But they formed the true bedrock of his teaching.
Meaning it all comes back to inner strength, relentless discipline, and just consistent internal practice.
Absolutely. The reliance on discipline, intention, and inner strength was paramount. That's what was needed to achieve and navigate multidimensional awareness in a stable, meaningful way. The plants might, temporarily show you the door, but it's your own internal power cultivated through these rigorous practices that truly allows you to walk through it and explore what lies beyond, safely and with purpose.
So to recap this incredible deep dive then, Don Juan's view of these plants of power was incredibly profound and, as you said, fiercely pragmatic. They were never recreational drugs, certainly not sources of ready-made wisdom.
Not really.
Their sole, strict purpose was to provide that initial jolt, that first strike, just to reveal the multidimensional nature of reality. They were the key to unlocking the door, maybe, but definitely not the journey itself.
And that, you see, is where the real work begins for the warrior,
Mhm.
moving beyond the crutches to cultivate genuine internal power. Which I think raises an important question for you, our listener. What barriers of perception might you have in your own life?
Mhm.
And how might one begin to explore beyond them? Not necessarily through external crutches, but by perhaps relying instead on your own discipline, intention, and inner strength.
So what does this all mean for you? Don Juan's teachings, perhaps they might inspire a deeper look into your own capabilities for expanding understanding, far beyond what any external aid could ever really offer. Until next time, keep diving deep.